Hi, welcome to the show. Shout out to all our fans out there. Appreciate y'all.
The Darius here, they just can't fight into it, even in the 3v3. Sketch completely healthy, the hero of yesterday, up against Maryville. He's not even needed to do nearly as much this time, but they are landing some chains on, and Dunk's trying to do as much as he can. Flux into the backline, diving through, and the Krugs are getting involved in this one. Goo going on an absolute rampage, and they're trying to make something for it. Here's Scoop, but the team splits away, and he just does not get a takedown. Prismal, Ryoma has to dash and flip away. Wouldn't you know it, Gwen is immune. You can't really do the damage from the distance, but that needlework is big, not big enough. Scoop does get one. They will make him pay for it. As Goo is able to take over here, Ryoma trying to hold on. And they're going to flash into the handshake. No, that's going to be enough. Another for Goo.
I'm getting away. This is a good amount of money that's now for Kidswell. As bottom lane, Masu fancies his chances again.
Another 1v1 unfolding. Heal and barrier both popped, and Masu is just winning out the trades.
This mid lane, the tier 1 has fallen, but they should be able to stop the push from tier 2. Probably Bob Muir in this top lane, gonna head on back as well. So the Baron is still standing at the moment, dragging up in a minute 30.
Yeah, that ends up being
Oh
really
no!
big stop. Come on, oh,
Robbie
the
Bob,
chopper!
no, the chopper stopping the TP. Robbie Bob looking to find something.
Is he get the kill?
Drop. Is it gonna be enough? No, the race. Oh
Yeah.
my God! Oh,
Oh,
it
he
is!
got him!
Oh my God, he actually got him. The Chaos Storm 2 speed.
Unleash power on Captain Shrimp, so this is going to come down
is
to it
everybody.
as here comes Winnie to steal the Baron away! He's gonna give his life great use of his own ultimate just to try and stay alive, but now he's caught inside of the Dragon Pit. Everybody aggro in existence trying to keep the rest of the team away. Look at how low Ginger Turmeric's bot lane is, but Winnie taking a lot of damage as well. It's just flashes, burn left and right, advantages baiting on either side. A shutdown as existence will fall and isolated from the pack goes Deep Learn. How did AOE win this one?
It was so close the entire time, and I think it props to Existence for going crazy. We're not quite done yet.
I don't know if Taco Gaming can honestly run the risk of trying to get it, because look, their mid lane is just being shoved in. You see the ultimate coming out from Lens, not quite gonna find the damage they need because the heal's coming out from Rovex. Oh my God, that is so much down. Those barrels hit like it's. Oh my God, what?
Wait, what?
Yo!
Did he just ghost barrel him?
Where did Gorica go? He's gone. It's like off to safety, and now Under Thieves looking to push the offensive here. Health bar's getting lower and lower. The Dragon's about to be a smite fight. They do get Rovex though. Down the Dragon
They
goes.
secure it, that's all.
Into the hands of Taco Gaming. City Witty can't escape his fate. Will still goes down. Baby Gate gets dropped, and so oh no, I don't think he's gonna get out of this one alive. Never mind. They grab Ayurura, and they grab themselves Gorica as well.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, y'all, welcome! Are you ready for the semifinals for PGCQ? Alright, we'll be your host for the evening ravishing, most ravishing me out of the internet. Joined here by my side once again by veteran, you know, we just can't seem to escape each other, but you, big brain analyst, you of course back yet again by my side, and I believe, you know what, I want to say hot take enjoyer and very handsome man, Mr. Parth himself has been joining us today. How are we doing with veteran first?
Oh, I'm doing fantastically. Very excited for these semi-finals, especially for my boys over at TBA later. They're hoping to continue their upset streak. Yeah, very excited in general.
All right, I'm glad. Now, Parth, can you say that you're as excited as veteran?
I don't think it's ever possible to be as excited as veteran, but I'll do my best. No, it should be a fun set of games, I think. Obviously, TBA coming in with the huge upset, making it as far as they have, should be good to see them kind of ramp up as they move towards the finals, which are happening tomorrow or upcoming
They
this
are
week.
indeed happening tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah,
This is it.
So it should be great to see the last two teams clash before they meet the finals. So.
I mean, and today we'll be able to find out who that is going to be potentially, which is the absolute best part of a lot of this. But if you guys are not already kind of aware as to what's going on, this is of course the PGCQ. For many of these amateur teams, this is do or die, and right now it is do or die time for a final 4 teams. As you already did mention, TBA, 100 Thieves, AOE, and Cincinnati Fear will be all playing today. And for them, you know, this has been a long road coming. If we take a quick look at our brackets, we'll be able to see how exactly we did get here. Because veterans so far, I'm sure many of these results were expected, but some definitely did catch us off guard.
Well, maybe it caught you mere mortals off guard. The TBAEG Prodigies game's obviously one of the bigger upsets. The Jake's Cincinnati Fear one did end up being an upset, though a lot of that was around substitutions on both sides that dramatically changed the makeup of both teams. Ultimately, yeah, I would say that these brackets are definitely not what people thought they would be coming into the tournament. Definitely well-deserved for TBA, though you could see their development over the course of the tournament, particularly in a map-based way. It's interesting to talk about a team strong as 5 rather than individually.
All right, because now on the other end as well, Parth, I wanted to also get your perspective on looking at what we have here so far. Did you expect this as well? Like, were you looking at these 4 teams to be our finalists, or did you perhaps have another idea in mind, perhaps seeing more LCS affiliated teams here?
I definitely think that most people expected the bottom side of the bracket to have 2 different teams. I think Jake's Kittens, based on paper, and EG Prodigies with how they've been developing, were more expected to be here. But I think it was really cool to see TBA, based on their core, kind of win the collegiate side and come in hot. And I feel like that confidence kind of got them to where they are today. So it just depends on if they can keep riding the momentum on all the way through.
Yeah, which is definitely going to be a really big point on a lot of this, right? Because considering how teams have continued to go from game to game, week to week, our quarterfinals were just about last week, and considering how teams have been progressing on forward, I do wonder if the momentum that you were talking about will continue forth. But one team that I feel like is not only riding the high momentum, right, but has been maintaining consistency throughout the entire time has been our main matchup for the day, right off the top of the dome. That's going to be 100 Thieves going up against AOE. So I want to give a brief overview of what we have going on today. As you see within our 2 matchups, they will be presented to us very shortly. So let's dive on a overall perspective on the first game of the day. Veteran, I'll come to you first. Give me your high-level thoughts on the first game.
I think this game's going to be decided by jungle. Obviously, both sides are going to look at Sniper as being the potential hero of the entire match. But the play around that so heavily based on Fanatics, almost spam ganking of the top side, and the fact that Skytech loves to move around with his jungler into enemy jungler on all of these other matches and heavily contest that could disrupt the flow of how 100 Thieves like to play around Sniper. If they disrupt it by attacking Fnatic, that could spell an end to 100 Thieves' game plan. Otherwise, 100 Thieves, we know what to expect from them. Sniper's a big player for them. They play heavily around Sniper. That's what they want to do. If they get permission to do it, that's the question today.
For sure. Now, because part on your end as well too, would you say that with how things are looking, I know the jungle perspective is something that's also quite important as well, but is there something more out of 100 Thieves that you expect to see, or would you say the AoE might catch them off by surprise, if anything?
I think, like the veteran said, top side is definitely the strong part of the map for 100 Thieves. And I think Winnie or Winston is kind of the more consistent aspect of AoE. I will say that Sword and Winnie have played together on our TSM Academy for a split, and so they kind of know each other and how they like to approach the game and what they think. So I definitely think that Sword is going to make sure that he matches up with his jungler and prevents anything that Winnie's going to do to attack them.
Because considering Winston as well too, previously down in top 8 for C-Lol as well. Now, although his team did end up following eventually the winners of being the main core of TBA as well, you know, he himself alongside Gorica did have some fantastic performances. And if you look at both these teams, I know that this AoE team is also one that caught us off a little bit by surprise with how they've progressed forward, because considering they can be pretty unpredictable, I'd say, in my opinion, veteran.
Yeah, I mean, I think a major aspect of that is actually in these very early scenarios, Young on these lane bullies. Maybe there's not that much in terms of presence on team fights later, but certainly in terms of map control, just having that consistent mid laner who plays these champs like Karma, like Syndra, can do a lot to enable these jungle pressures from Skytech and Winnie. I would also be very interested, Path brought up Sword here, about whether just the 2v2 on bot side, now that we're seeing Sword instead of Mist coming back, if they would be able to just pin Skytech, and if they do, how Winnie plays without Skytech. Because they roam so heavily together, I've often wondered if Skytech's the one in control there. So maybe Sword just ends the game bot lane, and 100 Thieves are allowed to play for topside because of that 2v2.
Yeah. I will say that in comparison to 100 Thieves next from Spring Split, where they were incredibly dominant, I do think that Darkwings is sort of a younger player, whereas I think Young has been kind of around the scene for a long time and has a much more diverse pool that he can pull from. So I do think that in terms of drafting around mid-jungle and what the mid laners can do, if they do decide to attack draft, especially the mid lane, they could throw some wrenches into the game plans of 100 Thieves.
And that's the best part about a lot of this, right? Because both Young and Darkwing's overall match pool, overall champion pool too, the way it differs so greatly can truly be a deciding factor for this entire series, considering how aggressively both these teams we know can be. And one big point on that as well is how Young previously was on 100 Thieves, so I'm sure he's decent familiar, with how the system is going to work. And Veteran, I think he's looking to perhaps let him know that, I left for a reason. I'm still out here like that.
Well, and on the other side, Darkwings wants to prove that he deserves the spot on mid lane on 100 Thieves next, and definitely this isn't a guy that's been playing super heavily to win lane and to dominate the map through that. I would love to see how he adapts to the challenges that AOE presents. He could also end up being a big linchpin of how 100 Thieves are able to take the whole series.
Because, most definitely so. Considering how Darkwings as well has shown quite a lot of hero performances, but also the versatility in being able to be an anchor in the mid lane too. But I know Young also presents that fair amount of possibility. To take a closer look at this matchup though, I know there was one mid matchup that we wanted to be able to break down a little bit further, that being the head-to-head between the top lane. Now, we talked a lot about Sniper and we have so consistently, but you go ahead and give me your take as well, because we know he's quite good, but I know there was a bit deeper, something deeper that we wanted to break down about him and 100 Thieves.
For sure. So obviously, if you have an LCS affiliated team in the amateur program, you're looking to develop a few talented players that you can eventually promote into your academy and LCS systems. And obviously, Sniper is a really, really talented player. You see all of his stats across the board are really impressive, and the team clearly functions around him really well. What I definitely want to see, especially with the changing of the meta or as the year goes on, is how do they develop Sniper more into a versatile, well-rounded player instead of just a player who's playing around. He's already shown and proven that when he has the resources at this level, at the amateur level, he's able to carry games. I think for the next steps in his development is like can he now play the champions like Ornn? Can he now take champions blind and play weak side? Can he let other parts of the team carry and show that he can play different roles in the team? Because that is what you need to do if your eventual goal is being on an academy and LCS level program, to be a well-rounded player. And this is a great opportunity, and this is a great time in the amateur program to be able to try and diversify that.
And that's the most interesting part about a lot of it, right? With just being able to see the progression of him as a player too. Because I know one thing that many people were critical of previously was being able to look at him as somebody who doesn't have a very expensive champion pool, right? It's, this guy plays, many different carries and such, and he needs resources to be able to perform. But I find Veteran throughout this entire year, he definitely has been able to show flexibility, but what else is missing to be able to have Sniper be truly the top prospect many people seem to be?
I mean, I'd definitely be worried that it becomes dependent on a team playing heavily to him on top side. Like, what I immediately see when it comes to those is both the kill participations and the deaths, right? The kill participations are obviously higher on General Sniper. That's because they pivot the entire game around him. They won't make a play unless it is around him, so obviously his kill participation will be higher. Deaths are higher on Zamudo. Well, that's because sometimes Zamudo doesn't have rest of his team playing around him, while on the other hand, Sniper's going to have 3-man dives performed for him topside. This can definitely be an issue. It limits the pool of teams Sniper could potentially play in the future if this isn't something that is addressed. You'd basically need a team that's willing to play this heavy topside. And obviously, there are some players that are being able to do that. Like Hooney, off the top of my head, has basically never deviated from this kind of playstyle. But the kinds of teams that you can go on are few and far between. If you want to maximize the opportunities, you do have to show that you can do more than just one thing, and then suddenly the scope of the opportunities will improve. Like, obviously, he's a great player. He just needs to be able to show he's great at different things as well, not just this one playstyle.
Right, because just the variation to be able to realize to people like, hey, you know, I understand that I'm good at the game, but I don't always necessarily have to be. And I find that one player that kind of rings true to my head when I think about things like this is most recent Academy to LCS promoted player Dokla. Right, who's also shown his progression as well throughout this entire year and now playing on CLG as well.
Yeah.
But Parth, I did want to get a bit more of your take on it as well, because when you look at the amateur ecosystem, right, I'm sure there are more pinpoints that we're looking for aside from you're good at the game and you have a high KDA, right? You're looking to be a team player, and how would you say that you're looking at that as well from your own perspective?
I think it just depends on the goals of your program and where you are. If you're a player who previously played in the LCS and then came down to Academy, you're trying to kind of diversify and show a new side of yourself, because it is really hard to get promoted back into the LCS if you are the same player that you were when you left, right? And so if you're coming down to the Academy and amateur level, you're trying to show something different. And I think that's what Dokla did. He took the kind of player he was, where he was kind of a role player for a team, and then he kind of converted and changed his playstyle to trend more towards the carry champions. And then he showed that he was able to perform at that level in Academy, and that diversity in playstyle is actually what got him the promotion in CLG. It is fine if you do want to play like a singular playstyle on the Academy and amateur level and show if you can showcase that same level in relation to the players in the LCS. But what I find usually happens is that if you're a carry player, if you're someone who's really strong in solo queue due to your mechanics, and you stomp Academy and amateur playing this way, if you now go to the LCS level, let's assume Sniper moves up there, now he's playing against players like Someday, he's playing against players like Hooney, he's playing against players like Weibo. Those guys have a lot more experience. You're not going to be able to constantly play topside and gain huge advantages and be able to carry your game that way. So I do think that it is better at this level to, again, diversify your playstyle, figure out different ways to play the game, and make sure that you are ready for everything that the LCS is going to be able to throw at you, because it's much harder to develop at the LCS level, where you constantly have to optimize and index on winning every weekend, than right now, where you have a lot more time to kind of explore all the different things that you want to learn as a player.
And the prospect of that on its own just sounds nuts, to where you're kind of progressing week after week to be able to realize, okay, cool, this is how we have to adapt to win every single weekend, and to show not only our progression as team, but our progression as players too. But Veteran, I wanted to pick your mind a little bit and to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, while true for sure, there is a flip side of it. While I do agree that in a general sense on this level you should be developing, at this stage of the tournament, do we really want them to start playing a playstyle that they haven't played so much on stage and potentially risk being able to show how strong they can be at much higher levels? Do you risk getting knocked out of the tournament to develop yourself as a broad player? That's very often the issue that players have at this stage of these tournaments. For example, over in Europe, if you've gotten to EU Masters playing one place all over and over again, are you now going to risk losing EU Masters because you want to diversify your pool if you get higher up? You won't get higher up if you don't show that you can win EU Masters. So, whereas I do think it is a good strategy for him to diversify his pool, if he was to play the same style right now, I'm not going to rag on him for it. He should do everything he can to get as many viewers on him as possible, and that ultimately is going to have to be the trade-off he makes here.
Well, as of right now, we'll be able to see if he continues to get eyes on him and how he'll play today, and maybe even what our perspectives are on him in just a little bit. But before we get into that, I wanted to get your predictions for today's first matchup of our semifinals. Parth, let me hear it. What do you got for me to start off with you?
I definitely thought that 100 Thieves would go 2-0. I think they just have too much firepower and like a very clear plan in what they need to do to win. It's only if the enemy team decides to throw some wrench in their plans, they have a shot at taking a game or so, but for right now, 100 Thieves.
All right, cool. Veteran, quick thoughts on you for you.
I mean, I see the ways AOE can do it. I can see Skytech trying to disrupt in the jungle there along with Winnie. I can see Young trying to pull out his lane bullies, which means I have to predict 100% 100 Thieves 2-0 straight up. There's no real chance. Sword's going to lock Skytech in lane. Fnatic's going to get to do whatever the goddamn hell he wants, and Sniper's probably going to 1v3, and they're better in team fights as well. So yeah, have fun.
Well, that makes perfect sense. My main reasoning is that more of 100 Thieves follow me on Twitter, so it's 100 Thieves 2-1, baby. That's the reason. Simple as that. You want to win my favorite, you know, one thing to do, but the only prediction that matters is going to be our pet prediction as well from Grapes Dog Mochi. Let's see what they had to say on who's going to win today. Mochi, what do you got for me?
Hey guys, Mochi's gonna help us here predict the series between 100 Thieves Next and AOE Esports. Mochi, show us what you got. Go. Oh, AOE. Bit of an upset there.
Bit of an upset indeed, but we'll see if Mochi's correct or we are correct. Let's throw it over to our cast for the day, Jolly and Beatdown Boulevard, to take us into game number 1.
Hey, thank you so much, Ravish. And of course, we're going to check in with you guys on the desk there in between games numbers 1 and 2. But oh my God, Beatdown, you're joining me here for the day. We are in the semifinals already. Nobody can hear Beat. We're gonna reinstate that hype there. Beat, we're in semifinals. Any second now. Give it a sec.
That's the question. Okay, great. I don't know what I did, but it works now. What were we talking about, Jolly? Semifinals? Crazy how much time flies.
Semifinals day.
Isn't that insane? It feels like just yesterday the OQs not even just started, that we were signing up for them. But either way, we're here now. We have a great matchup ahead of us. 2 great matchups, actually. But talking about the first one, I think it just brought up a lot of big, interesting points. I think the one for me is that I am curious to see how AOE are going to come out today, because I agree that it's probably pretty 100 Next favored, but it could surprise us, especially if Mochi clearly just knows something we don't know.
Yeah, right. Mochi, I mean, that was a very quick decision that Mochi made right there. No hesitation on that one. We'll have to see if that upset actually comes through, though. And I do think that, you know, the desk also touched on the fact that 100 Thieves Next as a team, a big part of just their strong composition and cohesion tends to be towards the top and the jungle side. So maybe AOE isn't necessarily one of the better teams to try to focus really hard on playing towards the bottom side of the lane, but this might be an opportunity for them to find a bit of an advantage for themselves, also have a bit of a head start on some of these dragons and their earlier objectives down towards that side of the river.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because when you look at AOE, and I think Veteran touched on it, and it's the thing that we've been talking about a lot at length these last couple of days, is the way AOE ends up finding, I think, a lot of success ends up being when they're in situations where you see drafts where they're playing for Sketch, essentially, where I see all of their wins. It ends up being Sketch on these hyper carries, where he is a player who, one, we find out actually has been doing a lot of shot calling for this team as of late, but also just the kind of player who there is actually, I believe, a game in the OQs where they were behind, things were not going well, and Sketch literally says, just give me gold, I will win us the game, and he does it.
Yep. Yeah, and that is, you know, the reliability with a team like AOE. I think the consistency is the things that people really look at with 100 Thieves Next, right? When we're talking about standout top laners in general in all of Academy, whether we're talking just strictly collegiate, whether we're talking proving grounds, Sniper is the first name, if not one of the very first names that people are talking about. Not just that, but you got to consider the synergy as well that this team has had being together for as long as they have, and Fnatic is really standout on this one. So while I like that matchup of, you know, let's take a look at Sniper Zamundo, a lot of us kind of have the feeling that Sniper's going to be able to take over on this one, and I think inconsistency is definitely something you can kind of tip your hat to. In regards to Zamundo, the Winston I would like to touch on a little bit, because Winston has a bit more consistency, and while sure maybe he's not one of the first junglers that people think of when they think of amateur, I keep going back to consistency within this team and within the players, and I think Winston definitely stands out in that regard.
I think that's fair, especially when you look at Winston and Skytech together. They managed to make a lot of things happen both in and out of team fights for this squad. So the thing that I'm kind of looking for, and I think, again, it was mentioned on the desk already, what are you going to be able to do to prevent Fnatic from doing what he's wanted basically all tournament long for the most part, because he's been that jungler where he has a lot of early game impact. He is able to generate these leads for these laners, especially towards the top side of the map. Again, General Sniper, that player we keep talking about, ever so hyped up even before he was able to join Amateur. And now, how are you going to be able to shut that down as AOE Esports? And of course, like that kind of thing starts off with the draft.
Yeah, the draft. But speaking of that, I do think that at the end of the day, that's one of AOE's, again, stronger points, right? And I keep trying to, like, boost them up for me, because I want as much of a series as we can get out of this. Obviously, we want 3 games.
So
we want it
selfish.
to be a 2-1. I know, right? And for me and the viewers, all right, it's not just for me.
That's true. Okay.
But I will say, when it comes to getting really, really good cohesive comps and riding it out into the late game, that is definitely one of the strengths that AOE has as a team. And that's where I think, if they try to get a little bit more of that focus, that pressure towards the bottom side of the map, then they can see that late game come to fruition a little bit earlier, or maybe a little bit more in their advantage. But my gosh, when we talk about teams here, 100 Thieves is just so dang aggressive and strong that it really makes getting into the late game in a situation like that pretty difficult if the snowball starts rolling in their direction.
100%. And that's the thing that 100 Thieves Nexus is so good at, Jolly. That's the thing. They are so... Because of a jungler like Fnatic, who for the most part, again, largely uncontested in this tournament, it's so easy for them to be able to just continue to build these snowballs and get into these points where there are leads that they don't even have to really worry about anymore. It's interesting, too, where I actually talked to Coach Mist, where asking, do any games, because there were a few instances where we saw some game 3s come through, a little pressure towards their side where they end up losing a game here and there. And even then, he says every series has been pretty chill. Like, word for word, everything's been pretty chill, easy for them so far throughout this tournament, despite some of the game losses coming through.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to see. We do have draft prepped and ready to go here very, very shortly. Is there anything, I guess, for this one in particular today, especially because we're in semifinals, we're getting to where things, I mean, they have mattered, but really, really matter. Is there anything in particular you want to see from one of these two teams or want to avoid?
I think the big thing is going to be, another thing that AOE does a lot is end up prioritizing Young in the draft, where you give him these good matchups in the mid lane so you can allow Winston and Skytech to be able to move around, go for these invades, and make these more aggressive plays. And I think that's going to be their best chance, enabling Young so that it makes it easier for Skytech and Winston to be able to try and... Because again, that's what we've been highlighting this entire time, trying to make it so that the jungle of 100 Next can't actually generate these leads for the team.
All right, I think we got draft ready to go. You guys don't have to listen to us anticipating how this will play out, because as we can see, 100 Thieves Next is going to be starting on the blue side, the higher seeding in this one. Of course, AOE not far behind them in terms of points and standings, but they are going to have the counter pick ability of locking in red side for the start of the series.
Yeah, and I mean, already based on what we were just talking about before draft popped up, I imagine it's going to be prioritized for Young. Again, making sure he has that best matchup into Darkwings. But right now, early on here, what's the priorities going to be? I think in the previous series, one thing 100 Next did a lot was they just had Fnatic on Graves, had him on there the whole time. You don't see that many farming junglers actually come through, a couple exceptions. Of course, being things like we do see sometimes the Lilias come through, the Graves, the Kindreds, things like that, but it is a rarity. It is mostly about the setups, the Viegos, and the Wukongs being such high priority here. And are 100 Next going to keep going with what they've been doing, or are they going to shift to more early game aggressive jungles?
Literally, I mean, physically speedy champions is something that Fnatic really excels on when you're talking about the initiators as well. You know, I'm surprised we haven't seen more of like the Nunu coming through just because of the momentum of the speed you can get. The Graves was actually banned out here by 100 Thieves though, so they have a lot of confidence in this one, and that also kind of goes towards maybe them focusing more on Sniper and his matchups as opposed to the synergy between these two, because Sniper is such a good individual player that at the end of the day, he can, I mean, just absolutely stomp a lane and transition the game into late stage, or I guess team fight stage, far earlier than a team like AOE would ever want to go into.
Yeah, and it's something that Winston does play quite a bit, so it makes sense that if they're not going to play it, they don't want to give him as many farming options. We could see them go for something like the Viego. I like that AOE are actually pinching out Lens's options a little more. The Lucian, Kalista, we could very well see a third ban come through, because even though we do hype up Sniper, Fnatic, the top side of 100 Thieves Next quite a lot. I think Lens has also been stepping it up since he joined the roster, because he is one of the recent additions, of course, alongside with Darkwings. I think these bans are also kind of reflective of that kind of respect he's earned.
Senna is also incredibly powerful right now, so kind of going back to basics for a lot of these enchantresses might also be the way to go. We know Nami, Janna are so powerful at the moment and are going to be nerfed relatively soon. I know I personally have been taking advantage of how busted they are at the moment, how much their shielding does. Sona, another one along those lines. Karma, really these enchantresses or these sorcerers that have additional shields within their kit are just going nuts right now. So it makes sense that getting the long range and the aggression as well as that initiation, a little bit of crowd control is really the mark for both of these teams. And then get Callisto the Lucian out of there, get that increased speed. You don't want lane pushers available for 100 Thieves. And there it is. You called out the Wukong, that's what we're getting.
Yeah, it's been super high priority. I mean, of course, you do have so much team fight potential there with the Cyclo when you get to level 6. So it's not so surprising that it is such a common pick here coming through. And that's what we're going to see Fnatic playing so far in game 1. And that's the thing a lot of teams like to prioritize overall. What's the answer for AOE? I mean, you could go for a farming jungler of your own for Winston. Graves is taken out, but things like Lilia and things like that are available, but it's going to be the Trundle Hover, actually, which ends up being a solid answer as well, just because of the fact that you have the ability to steal stats. He's really good into a lot of AD junglers that are melee, just because he's just, the ability to steal AD is just so insane.
It is, and then you got the Ezreal as well to follow it up, right? So limiting Fnatic's ability to disengage from these fights is definitely going to be a good priority that AoE has. Locking in the Trundle, having somebody like the Ezreal, it allows for that disengage to be forced through. And oh my gosh, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, Beatdown, but I'm a pretty big Xayah fan.
Oh, are you? No, I don't think so. So I think that's fair. I mean, it's interesting too that the Ezreal makes a lot of sense for AoE. We're highlighting how Winnie and Skytech really good at syncing up and making plays even in the early game. So having the Ezreal there for Lynx so that he can lane 1v2, be on his own, makes a lot of sense. It's kind of similar things with the Xayah. You're able to kite a bit at level 6. You have a lot of safety with that Featherstorm. So already we're seeing some instances where both of these teams likely, even from what we know beforehand, maybe playing away from that bottom side of the map.
And I think, you know, one of the biggest reasons that I love Xayah so much as a champion is, yes, you have the escapability, right? Thanks to the Feather Storm, you have that untargetability for a moment, you have the reposition. The biggest thing really is just all of these abilities that you're setting off, it's layering down the feathers and it forces to the reposition coming out of the opposition in your laning ADC. So even if you're not going to be getting the Blade Collar on them and getting the lockdown for an initiation, you're forcing them to step farther back or maybe reposition to where they would not ideally be in the lane to press forward. Does look like a lot of damage in the potential though for AoE, as the final lock-in for this phase is going to be Zoe here for Young. And I mean, we've seen this guy pop off on this champion over and over and over again.
We have, and this is a pretty interesting too, because you combine it with the fact that there's the Ezreal, the Trundle, you got a lot of space creation, zone control, poke. That's why you see the Jace banned away by 100 next, just to take away at least one more element there that Zamudo could be running in the top lane and make it basically impossible to ever approach AoE's composition. And on the AoE side, you're seeing mid lane bans right away, making sure, again, how much priority we see them put into Young now that the Zoe pick is locked in, just removing things that might be a problem for him so that he's going to be able to be aggressive, get the push, and allow Winnie to do what him and Skytech do really well.
Do what they do well. We're gonna round these ones out, focusing on actually banning away Darkwings' opportunities here from AoE. The Leona is gonna be the final one, and that's certainly not something you want when it comes to not being able to disconnect from these fights, not being able to disengage. If you're 100 Thieves, Leona is incredibly limiting on your positioning, but they're gonna go with another one who is incredibly busted right now. And you know what? As much as I like to harp on Yuumi for not being incredibly fun to play on an Ezreal, my goodness, this can be a huge lane win right now for AoE.
Yeah, 100%, and it just makes it that much harder to approach AoE's composition. Again, we talked about how much zone control, space creation they have, and then another example with that final chapter with the Yuumi coming through, the healing that's going to come out later into the game is also a big issue for 100 Next, and now we've got to see what's going on there in the top side for 100 Next. It's looking like it is the Fiora lock-in, and now all that's really left is what Darkwings is going to be playing here, so it is a little bit more about the split push. More DPS seems to be the answer that they're looking for here, because we are going to see that Azir.
That's a lot of split push ability. We're talking just the Azir and the Fiora alone, and then you combine an assassin style jungle to jump into it. But Hey, disengage and engage is the name of the game right now for AOE. They have got plenty of it. But once again, I will touch back on the fact that this is more of a later game, a later team fight stage composition for AOE, whereas with 100 Thieves, if they're able to get the ball rolling in their direction in the early parts of this game, it's going to be very difficult for AOE to stay alive.
Yeah, so the thing with AoE is that, especially with Skytech being on something like the Yuumi, where we're used to usually seeing him on the more engaged supports, things like Nautilus, Leona, etc., means that he's not going to be able to have that kind of same impact in the early mid-game that we usually see, but later on, you link up with someone like Winnie, you link up with Lynx, and apply that healing, the adaptive force, the extra damage coming through, and the ultimate, you do become a big issue here. And I like the Malphite because even though in lane, it's whatever, the thing that matters is that in the team fight, Zamudo can go down a little bit of gold XP. It's not as important as long as you have that unstoppable force when it comes time to fight for these objectives. Yep. I mean, all I'm going to say is Lens is going to get a lot of mileage out of that Featherstorm.
Yeah, and all right. Yes, and it has to be timed incredibly well, but the problem is, I mean, you get the engagement from that Malphite, the unstoppable force, but then you've also got, you know, a Yuumi who can ultimate on top of that. You've got Ezreal who's going to be bouncing in and out. You have to watch out for the burst damage, for the burst damage that's coming from this Zoe, and then on top of it, you're going to have to be navigating around these pillars, avoiding the subjugation and taking all of that additional damage out of Winnie, so I really like it. There is resilience, right? And it kind of opens up an opportunity for AoE to say, hey, we can kind of falter in the early game, right? Obviously, nobody wants to do that. But when you're talking about this split-focused team composition that 100 Thieves has locked in, you got to be feeling pretty good if you're a fan of AoE right now because they have the resilience to hold out until later games and to prevent that split pushing to working out. That's just a situation where you say, hey, Malphite, one other member, go to the split pusher, and they're shut down.
I think that's a pretty big point there, especially when you talk about resiliency to make it to the late game. That is, I think for me, a little up for question for AoE. Because even though we talk about how they have good scaling tools, later on in the game, they're in a really good spot. Early on, 100 Next, I think they have a lot of agency here, especially when you look at the jungle support duo of the Wukong and the Rakan, something we've seen Lens play quite a bit with a lot of success, if you ask me, is they have the ability to be able to move around the map, make these plays, even before level 6. But again, Skytech, though we usually see him on those more engaged supports, he's on the Yuumi, isn't going to be able to be as impactful. And we talk about how important it is to stifle 100 Next in that early game, especially with something like Sniper in the top lane. Playing this Fiora, you allow them to get early leads, then, I mean, they're not even playing for the team fight. It is more for split. What the Fiora is for.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are AoE here, you can't really just there's no easy way to navigate this early game, right? We know how aggressive 100 Thieves picks are. We also know how aggressive they play and their style is. So for AoE, you just kind of have to let things push in the early points of the game. You got to hope that Winnie is able to find some clears, doesn't face any invades, and Fnatic of all players is one that certainly likes to try to go for something after a half jungle clear or a lower or upper jungle clear. But nothing too crazy to start this game number 1 out. Of course, it is a best of 3, so plenty of time.
That's right. First to 2. That is what these teams are aiming for. What's up? I'm hearing we are coming back to us. Hello, Jolly. I haven't seen you in so long. How are you?
It's been forever. I'm great. It's a beautiful day outside. And I always like to say, you know, it's a gorgeous day, but there's nowhere I'd rather be than sitting here with the blinds closed in front of my computer, you know, casting League of Legends with you. So plus we've got some incredible series, and I think in particular, this one is some teams, maybe not everybody thought AoE was going to be here for semifinals for the second series of the day. I definitely think that's the situation with both of those teams, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair point there. Of course, we do have a pause that was about to take place, so we'll be back to the game very shortly. But to your point, yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually didn't expect AoE Esports to get this as far as they did either. And I think, interestingly enough, this is a good time to talk about, I was talking to their coach, Nutty, last night about, you know, the challenges that they've been going through. And AoE, because through their members, of course, were in collegiate, playing in CLOL, things like that. They didn't get a lot of practice time, and actually did want to stress that the fact that they've done so well without practice time really says a lot about these players in AoE.
A great engagement by 100 Thieves next right there, though. Sword managing to get that grand entrance and a lot of damage onto Skytech. Luckily for him, he's a Yuumi. So you just hop right onto Lynx, and you're okay for the next little bit. But the protection that she has to offer at the moment is certainly lowered, especially with a situation like that. Another engagement by Sword, and some extra damage there onto Lynx.
That's the thing with Yuumi. It feels like you try and trade health with her, but it ends up being useless when she goes untargetable. Of course, though, Lens and Sword will have the push early on into this bottom lane. You talked about Fnatic invading an early jungle clear. Well, Darkwings is on the way to move in with him.
And this is my surprise face right now.
Oh,
it is going
he
to
already
be the
pillared.
good damage, and he did. He sent the pillar in. Fnatic is going to be able to snag that buff away from AOE. So no matter what, that is a win for Fnatic. He took no damage on top of it.
Literally, it just cost them a smite charge. Honestly, it's unfortunate because Winnie was expecting the invade, but he dropped the pillar in that top rush, expecting that was where Fnatic would come from. It was being nice pathing, no defensive vision coming through, and yeah, it's a buff stolen. Now they're going to be able to secure that bottom Scuttle Crab, allow them to maintain control of vision on that bottom side of the river, and make it easy for 100 Next to be able to get these early drakes. Because the big thing, too, when you're playing with split comps, is that, in that case, with Sniper being on the other side of the map, always drawing pressure, it's hard for 100 Next to actually prevent Dragon Soul stacking from coming through. So getting these early Dragons, at least one, is going to put them in a really good spot.
Ooh. Sniper does get pillared there. Good positioning by him, though. Means that he's not going to get locked down any further than that. And Zabuto is very low on mana, so this is something that Sniper can recognize as saying, all right, you spent your time here, Winnie. Luckily, no time wasted, though, by that jungler for the side of AOE. Pokes his head in, says, all right, that's the best I can do. I'll take a creep, and that's my tax.
And we got chat predictions, it looks like, for who was going to win the series here. Of course, overwhelming percentage. Game one, right, thank you. It ends up being a nice number, percentage, for Next, but AOE definitely has some fans. They have some believers in chat.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a more generous prediction than the desk gave AOE Esports. That is for sure.
That's true.
I mean, several call-outs for a 2-0 coming out of 100 Thieves Next, and I do think this is probably going to be the most decisive of these two series that we have for the day, but hey, we're early on. We're less than 5 minutes into game number one, so we'll just have to see who is correct here. No matter what, everybody feels like 100 Thieves has the upper hand in this matchup.
Right, so far no blood has come through. Winnie, of course, in the area. Yet another, just a show of face to help get waves in so the laners can get good resets off. It's really all he's looking to do at the moment here. The timing is interesting because right now, the first dragon has spawned. We already talked about how important it is for 100 Next, their comp, to be able to get that first one so they can really allow Sniper to play that cross-map pressure later on into the game. But so far, no one's going for it.
Yeah, at that point, too, I mean, if Winnie's going to be showing his face down there, you don't immediately want to transition that into a dragon play. It's just so expected, something that 100 Thieves Next would have easily been able to collapse on. But it is good pressure that's coming out of AOE Esports to start this one out. Lens just working on trying to get to that first item. 1.5 items really do start popping off when you're able to get a little bit of crit under your belt as the Xayah and lay those feathers down pretty quickly with some extra attack speed here. So a pretty standard start, though she is going Cole on this one, which I like to see. Very aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing into Yuumi Ezreal, really safe lane, so you're not really too worried. Fnatic, though, you gonna jump over the wall? No, he's not. So the thing that's interesting now is that because we talked about Winston twice now, showed up to lane to help get these shoves in, to help fix these lane states so laners can recall, Fnatic's just been able to very freely farm and hasn't really shown up to very many plays or really tried to force any besides stealing camp. So you've seen a pretty decent lead start to grow here. Winston looking for an invade opportunity, but Sword's already on the case. He says, no, sir. It's not chicken nugget o'clock for you.
A little bit of convergence here by AOE towards the mid side. That Paddle Star is not going to find a target. Young, maybe looking for something, will find the Sleepy Trouble bubble. No opportunity. Oh, the follow-up does come through with the Paddle Star, the ultimate on top of it out of Darkwings. But First Blood ends up going to Skytech.
Still, that's a big push coming through here. I mean, Darkwings falling. You do get assist gold onto other members of the team. It opens you up to secure this first dragon, which we were saying, important for 100 Next, but it's going to go over to AOE. Nice pressure onto Darkwings, who was simply trying to defend Winston's Raptors along with Sword. You can see it, by the way, Sword and Lens They want to see if they can do something about this Dragon Star, but it's looking like not a whole lot's available to them. Oh, Fnatic's here.
Yeah, Fnatic is in. Winnie
Winnie's
is relatively low on this one, and Fnatic is actually going to jump forward.
Oh,
hits
he's
the pillar,
gone.
Gets taken down with the empowered Q on that, and this Dragon is at half health. A nice tasty morsel for 100 Thieves next to try to go in on Fnatic, just waiting for the opportunity. The Ignite drops on a Young in the backside. He's going to be able to pick one up. The second proc of that Cyclone comes through, and Darkwing shows up just in time. The heal as well coming through from Lynx to try to save Skytech, but it's not going to be enough. The Q and auto attack reset means Fnatic will secure a second kill in this fight, and that Dragon should belong now to 100 Thieves.
What a scrappy early game we're seeing coming through here from both of these teams. First few minutes, nothing, and now we already have 6 kills to our name, Jolly. But thing is, spawn timers, they're low. So Winston is already back on the map, so you don't see 100 Next actually try to do anything about the Dragon. And I mean, a big thing that contributed to this is look at Winston. He is solo tanking, and Fnatic, who again, short respawn timers, was able to come through, just immediately goes in and takes the smite away from AOE. Of course, things continued getting scrappy, and ultimately 100 Next decided it was time to go for the fight since Fnatic hit level 6. But it ended up being pretty even, as a lot of kills ended up going back and forth. Dragon went to nobody.
Yeah, Dragon went to nobody. Still up and on the table, though. If you are 100 Thieves, you definitely feel good about that engagement. As you take a look at the total gold, of course, Fnatic and Darkwings are sitting a few hundred above Young, who is currently the highest on the team. Sword, the only member right now of 100 Thieves Next that is lower in gold than any individual on the side of AOE Esports. Of course, as I say that, things tend to adjust. The Sniper gets dropped down a little bit here, but I like to see what we're seeing in the top side. Not as much pressure as you might have expected coming out of Fnatic, who was really just spending as much time as possible in the jungle before that bottom side fight.
And I think overall you see that 100 Next, they do have leads a lot of the right places. You see the mid jungle is where a lot of the kills and assists have gone for the squad. And I mean, you just look at CS leads across the board here, which is also very beneficial, all equating to what we're seeing as that 1,000 gold lead so far. Now, 100 Thieves Next have a moment where they do have the numbers advantage and can fight for priority over this Rift Herald. Fnatic just got his ultimate up as well, that Cyclone. Will they actually try and fight for this Rift Herald?
Well, doesn't look like it. Lens is recalled, gets disrupted right there. We can see that during that entire determination period, Lynx was navigating his way up through the river. Of course, there is a ward in a bush, so he was seen there. Maybe part of the reason the 100 Thieves wanted to delay this initiation. It does look like Fnatic's going to look for something.
Oh, big Cyclone
comes out. Also, the quickness on top of it. That is a ton of crowd control onto Winston, who's going to go down. Fnatic taking a lot of damage as well. Skytech using the Ignite. It won't be enough.
Sniper!
Yes, just barely, but it's a flash forward from Lynx, or a shift forward and a flash forward from Lynx. It's going to ensure that's a trade.
Wow, and it ends up being the Herald secured for 100 Next. And I think whether intentional or not, the big thing that happened here is the initial back off from 100 Thieves Next. The way they walk away, ensure that Zamudo is engaged in the top side so that Unstoppable Force, big team fight tool, isn't actually available. And while Zamudo starts trading with Sniper, you can see on the minimap the rest of 100 Thieves Next. They move up and start to fight for the Rift Herald. Zamudo, he's trying to join the fight, but as soon as the Grand Challenge comes through, he realizes he has to commit to trying to 1v1 Sniper. And the worst part, Flash committed, it doesn't even work. Sniper ends up winning it out, even though he's traded.
The flash to hit that weak spot, though, was, I mean, a chef's kiss coming out of Sniper. And these are the plays that we expect him to make, where there is a very solid chance that he's going to end up going down, that he might not win that 1v1, but he has enough confidence in himself and the follow-up on the rest of the team that he almost always commits to those kinds of plays, and it worked out really well. He did end up getting the flash out of Lynx on top of it, as well as the shift that he has built in his kit.
So and now this ends up being a pretty good trade, even though we talk about how important that first Dragon is. 100 Next being able to win that fight, get all that extra gold, and secure the Rift Herald is honestly such a big boon for them, because Fnatic now can move his way to that top side. You can see that top turret. It's already lost a lot of plating. Fnatic's already on his way there. Cyclone is just coming off cooldown. Zamudo, no flash on this Malphite, and has no ultimate to escape. So he's basically done and dusted.
There's another initiation. Once again, the Cyclone is up and available. Fnatic says, I've got the opportunity to use it. The second pop-up comes through. Fnatic taking all of these shots is going to have to flash away to stay alive, but the kill goes over to Sniper.
Grand Challenge committed, both ultimates and a flash, but it's worth it, Jolly. You get to snowball Sniper even harder. The CS lead grows. He's up 2 kills, and now that's first brick. That bonus gold also going over to this Fiora. Means that Sniper is going to be a problem. And when you play these split plus champs, what you're looking for is snowballing them so that they have to draw so much pressure. Jungle pressure, support, everything to make sure they don't take too much off the map. Kind of like Sniper is already threatening to do.
Already that first tower going down, and of course it is 100 Thieves next. Sniper just going to be able to dash over the wall on this one, and this is the confident play that we have come to know and expect and respect out of 100 Thieves next, is they'll take these what look like small leads and transform them into really an unstoppable force. No pun intended there. Zumudo has tried to run that one in as many times as possible, but first items are already being finished right now for 100 Thieves next. AOE Esports a little bit behind.
That's right. 100 next. Really strong position right now. Like you said, a lot of mythics starting to come online. Whereas some members of AOE are lagging behind just a little bit. And again, like this lead is suddenly ballooned up to almost 4,000 in favor of 100 next. Again, all on that top side of the map. And soon, once we get to these objective fights where 100 Thieves next are going to try and utilize Sniper's pressure across the map as best they can, you're going to see another reason why the Xayah ends up being so good for Lens, because you can avoid things like the Unstoppable Force. Dark Wings has mobility, Fnatic has mobility. The whole point here is not necessarily going for these 5v5s. It's looking for picks wherever you can and just basically tugging AOE Esports all across the map between the core 4 of 100 next and Sniper, who is so ahead.
Is very ahead, yeah. It has kind of forced Winston Winnie to not really be able to respond where he wants to. It's the react as opposed to the proactive play, and that feels like it's currently entirely in the hands of Fnatic versus Winston in this matchup. We can see how much pressure that is provided across the map for all of 100 Thieves next. Now some pings coming out as they try to decide who they want to move in on. It looks like they're heading towards this bottom side. Lynx does have Yuumi on his back and does have a shift and flash available.
Yeah, but Young did walk to get the blue buff, gave Darkwings the opportunity to shove, move around the map, and just be there to help pressure, secure vision inside AOE Esports bottom side jungle, making sure they spend a lot of their time clearing up that and not trying to get control of the river, with Dragon coming up in a minute 30, and how badly 100 Thieves just need to secure one of them, Jolly. This is all going so well for them in the early game, and of course, you look at the top side. Sniper has Zumudo shoved in nice and far, and there isn't really much you can do about it.
There's really not. And you know, a lot of this pick is for the team fight stage, right? Zumudo really doesn't want to have to stay up in this lane, but he's been forced to because Sniper keeps coming up, very quickly pushing this as far as he possibly can, navigating to a different part of the jungle or a different lane so that he can assist with the pushing, and Zumudo just hasn't been able to roam like he would like to.
No, hasn't been able to do very much of anything. The opportunity will show itself. Jolly just, not yet. He's not really having a lot of fun in this game at the moment here, and the big thing is going to be probably off of a teleport. Of course, no flash, but he does have the teleport ignite coming through here, and it means that should 100 next be fully committed to a fight, not have any way out, Zumudo ends up getting a good angle. That Unstoppable Force can be a big way 100 next manage to get themselves back in the game.
There's tons of potential damage that you can lock down, right? If you have a really solid Unstoppable Force, you get the extra damage that when he's going to steal the resistances that are going to be stolen, and then you've got the Sleepy Trouble Bubble, the health, exactly. You've got Ezreal's ultimate, you've got the Paddle Star that can go in and provide a ton of this burst damage that I've been talking about, but the positioning needs to be there when 100 Thieves, or if 100 Thieves decides to begin that engagement, and I think that's been the struggle so far as we see the teleport come through from Sniper on the backside. Maybe just a little bit too early for the rest of the team. AOE splitting off from this Dragon. That might hand it over to 100 Thieves next, though. It's going to be Sword, who goes in with an ultimate. Skytech with that of his own. Several lockdowns. Fnatic not able to move. The Cyclone is going to come out for the first time. The second charge should come through right here. Zumudo gonna go down. No way, barely staying alive thanks to those potions. Young, the next target, the Blade Caller, doing enough damage for Lens to pick that one up. Fnatic finds yet another kill on the backside, and now Skytech is all on his lonesome. Throw a Q out, and that is yet another kill for Lens and a big win for 100 Thieves next.
Oh, big doesn't even begin to describe it, Jolly. We talk about Fiora and how you're able to draw pressure from across the map. How about on the same sides of the map, but away from the Dragon Pit? That flank TP from Sniper pulls members of AOE from the Dragon, making it easy for Fnatic to jump in the pit and win that Smite fight. Not only that, Jolly, they win the fight afterwards, and this gold lead has gotten absolutely massive for 100 Thieves next. Now they're up 7,000 gold, turrets falling all over the place, and it feels like we're getting to that point of no return. AOE still have that strong team fight. They just haven't had the fight they're looking for because they're so behind. They can't rely on that zone control, on that poke that we were highlighting in Champion Select. Lynx Young just can't quite get the damage off because they haven't reached those crucial item spikes. But you look across at 100 Thieves next, 2 items for Dark Wings. Sure, we're getting really close for people like Sniper, Lens, and Fnatic.
And it's not even the attack damage items that we're talking about too, or the, you know, ADAP items that we're talking about, because Lynx actually got the Trinity Force pretty early on in this game. It feels more like the problem is within Zamudo and Winnie for not being able to supply the front line that is necessary here. Sniper now just going to town, does not have the ultimate available, but has the entire rest of the team. Dark Wings comes in, throws out an ultimate just to say, hey, we know we have you, to end that one quickly. In the meantime, AOE starting up on Rift Herald, but that should be another tower down for 100 Thieves.
I love that. The understanding that AOE really want to go for this Rift Herald, commit a lot of people to it. 100 next is, no problem. We're so ahead. We don't care. You can take it. While they just continue to put pressure Zamudo, remove him further and further from this game, and you just give a free lane for Sniper, who's already so far ahead as it is. Honestly, I'm scared to ask, but I want to see the gold after this fight.
There it is. The quickness comes in to follow up the Cyclone. The second proc comes through. Just too much damage as Winnie tries to flash away from this one. It's going to be a double kill, though, as Fnatic's able to jump forward with that E. Maybe even get a clone over the wall to follow up the chase onto Lynx. Oh, it's still going. It's still going. Fnatic wants this one bad. Of course, SkyTech is right there. That is going to be the shift away. There's no flash available. The ultimate coming through from Yuumi. Out comes the Ignite on to that Ezreal, though. SkyTech now once again on his lonesome. Not going to be able to come out of that one alive. And we are now looking at Fnatic sitting at 8-0-6 here, beatdown.
That was 4 kills. He got in that one fight, Jolly. 2 doubles. Insane gold coming into 100 Nexus pocket, and they're just snowballing this game out of control. A snowball so big even Nunu and Willem would be proud. AOE Esports. Oh man. They're just losing on all fronts, Jolly. Take a look at the replay of what just took place again here at the fight. And it's the fact that, yeah, you lose the Herald, but you have that mid push. You have that opportunity to force these fights because you're just so far ahead as 100 Next. You can fight whenever you want.
There, look at the patience right there for Fnatic. Sword's like, I'm on the way, save the blast.
Yeah, I'm coming.
And the flash was already gone here from Lynx on top of that. So while you have the capability to shift away and you've got SkyTech on your back, there's just too much damage coming through from this 100 Thieves team that there's really no opportunity to escape from that unless you have a summoner spell as well.
Lynx certainly did not have it, as we're taking a look at the total gold yet again. I mean, it's 1,700 gold for Sniper over his lane opponent in Zamudo. And of course, Darkwing's having the most gold in the game. The CS, the kills, everything going through here. That's showing in this gold graph, where they're now 9,200 gold ahead. 100 Thieves next.
That's huge. At 20 minutes in, 9,000 is a massive amount of gold. And we already talked about beatdown at the beginning of this, how, you know, AOE really needed to snowball things in their direction, or at least stall out 100 Thieves being able to find themselves a lot of pressure in the early parts of this game. And unfortunately for AOE and their fans, that just was not an opportunity that they had for themselves. I think a lot of that had to do with the aggression early on of Darkwings and Fnatic.
And it is, and the fact that they've used that to get Sniper to the point where he is, the fact that this mid-jungle we're highlighting is now 10-1 together. Granted, a lot of that is on Fnatic. Under next, they're in this incredibly powerful position. Almost 10k up to the point where they have push in basically all 3 lanes. It allows them to shift so many members to basically almost handhold Sniper. Just allow him to keep pressuring Zamudo, get these turrets, set up these dives if he ends up stepping up too far. And at this point, might as well Dragon Stack too. Why not?
It's true. I mean, and the Dragon stacking capabilities, look at the vision that is across that blue side of AOE Esports' jungle. I mean, just a perfect line straight across to say, hey, anybody tries to navigate their way through this and they will be cut off from this. And 100 Thieves, they've been able to roam around solo on top of this. They have not just the split push ability to do so, but the damage under their belts to do so. And that's where AOE was hoping to take advantage of the late game and saying, hey, we've got the survivability. You guys, sure, you're kind of squirrely, all right? You have a lot of sneaky champions that have a lot of escapability and disengage. But at the same time, if you're not able to build up 1 or 2 items for AoE in the early parts of the game, like I was talking about specifically for Zamudo and Winston on that Trundle, then the whole composition just kind of falls apart for AoE.
It's brutal. Sniper, with all that vision bottom side, can safely farm that bot lane as much as he wants to, steal away jungle camps and everything like that. You're at this point where AoE, they have the Herald, sure, but they have to summon it in a really awkward position here. Try to see if they can at least get a charge up on that mid-tier 1 turret, but already you see the numbers moving for 100 next. They are approaching mid lane to make sure this doesn't result in a turret and an objective bounty.
It would be the 3rd tower for AoE. It looks like Fnatic wants to go in on this one. The flash forward, the quickness comes out, but it doesn't land on anybody thanks to Skytech on the backside. Sniper decides to go through the Cyclone, finally comes out. He's able to pick up the one, but it's too much damage onto Fnatic. That is both bottom laners down, and now the fight has been split. Fnatic on one side, Zamudo running away from the remaining 3 members here of 100 Thieves next, and this is an overall massive win here for 100 Thieves. The recognition by the majority of the team of, hey, let's just go up, push mid lane, we got this.
You got the Baron too as 100 next, and again, at this point, they just have vision everywhere, which means it's so easy for Sniper to constantly TP on the flank, cause so much problems for AOE Esports backline that they actually can't keep 100 next at their own effective range. So it just makes it impossible to team fight at this point. 100 next have basically, with this Baron, all the keys they need to close out game 1.
Yeah, it's not looking good for AOE Esports. We're going to take another look at that fight that led up to this Baron pickup, though, beatdown.
Right, and again, that overcommitment, that overextension in the mid lane was to ensure that the Rift Herald could get to that turret so that AOE Esports could get something. But that gave Sniper the opening to show up here. 2 people fell before this Fiora ended up going down, and the health bars of the rest of 100 next, Jolly, I mean, they're chilling right now. Oh, absolutely no threat whatsoever. And it made it even easier for them to secure that Baron that they now have for the next 2 minutes.
And that was honestly an easy decision for Sniper too, to say, hey, I can go in and take literally everything. They're going to waste 3 ultimates on me, and yes, they will take me down, but Sniper's already gone down 2 times, right? Sniper's not one of these really high bounty players that we're talking about like Fnatic or like Darkwings. So of all the members to go down, sure, as AOE Esports, you feel good that you took down Sniper, but what did you give up? What did you sacrifice for that kill?
At this point, AOE, they're going to have to sacrifice a great deal, Jolly, for, I mean, anything, really. 25 minutes in, this gold lead is borderline insurmountable. At this point, they're using the Baron to attack all 3 lanes because they're absolutely in that position to do so, where AOE Esports, look how much work they have to do just to get some vision on their side of the map, and look what it's about to cost them.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not a good position. Ooh, nice fancy footing though from Winston to avoid getting hit up by that grand entrance. That means Sword disconnects, but also a good move by 100 Thieves to not overcommit on that fight. They know they've already got the pressure, they can just maintain it.
Right, and that just allows them to continue to push that vision line so much further ahead to the point where we're at this point. No outer turrets remain on AOE Esports side of the map. It's just the ones in their base, and that means walking out of the base means walking out into darkness itself, where who knows what dangers lie. Well, I mean, we know. It's 100 next, and their entire team, who are very dangerous.
And I like how you point out the vision line, right? It did swap from that bottom lane. Of course, we do still have some really good vision there. But that line, that swept line across the top side of the red side of the jungle for AoE's side has just transitioned straight over. And that's where 100 Thieves is writing the script for this game. AoE Esports is not able to make proactive plays at this point in the game. You're this far behind, you have to play reactively. And unfortunately, given the compositions for these 2 teams, there's not really any recovery available from that that reactive play perspective.
At this point, it's going to take a miracle play. Although the vision line is pushed up for 100 next, some wards have slipped through the cracks for AOE Esports. See some red wards around that top side of the jungle. If 100 next, overcommit, maybe a flank TP from Zamudo. maybe some kind of huge, insane, unstoppable force in some of these wards. Well, I mean, ward that we're seeing could be the answer, but it's looking bleak, especially with now 100 next. Not exactly looking at the comps. Dragon stacking isn't exactly what I would have pegged this team to be going for. But at this point, this whole map belongs to you. You can take whatever you want.
Exactly. It's extra gold, it's extra experience, and it's something that you're removing from the potential plate of AOE Esports to have access to. And that is more than enough for 100 Thieves to say, hey, we can take 3 seconds out of our day to grab this dragon, because that's how quick these takes are for them. Again, the damage that they are stacking with this composition is just absurd right now.
Absurd, I think, is a good word. Unreal, disturbing, maybe a lot of words that you could use for. And I mean, you see these team fights. Like, so much of it is the only person really losing health is Sniper. I mean, as a Fiora, you have that good bit of sustain. Even though Sniper didn't go the Gore Drinker, went for the Stride Breaker, just to be able to stay on top of people is still brutal. This player is able to do. You can see it, tied for most XP in the game. And again, AOE Esports sequestered to their side of the map, barely able to leave base for more than maybe a minute without any threat of a play from Sword and the rest of 100 next. And all 100 of these need to do at this point is either keep AOE Esports here, start to pressure for these inhibitors, or just wait for them to slip up. And you get all it's going to take at this point is one team fight to close things out.
Yep. And the expectation is that at some point AOE is going to take one step too far out, right? That's as a team who's just able to push really far, who's able to consistently clear out their own jungle and the enemy's jungle. Eventually, one of the members of the team that has been pushed back to their own base is going to step out to try to clear a ward or to try to throw one down. And that's what 100 Thieves has kind of been waiting for. That's why they have this line of sight, that they just keep moving forward, and they're willing to wait for AOE to make a step, because at that point it is going to be a misstep. Plus, they now have less than a minute left before the next Baron spawns, and there's no real opportunity for AOE Esports to find any pressure within that time.
I mean, that's clearly the next play as well for 100 Thieves next. All you got to do is secure this next Baron and continue to pressure these inhibitor turrets, but with those Baroned up minions, it just means that you will have... I mean, you're going to be guaranteed to be knocking down some of these tier 3 turrets. And now you can see it, AOE... They're feeling that pressure. They know what's up in 30 seconds, and they want to try and do something about it here. And even though they're going to be able to finally be able to walk towards their red quadrant of the jungle, if a little, it is still a really dangerous position for them to be in. 14k gold down.
Yes, yeah. No matter where you are, if you're 14k gold, especially down to a team like 100 Thieves, it's a great pop back, though. That's going to mean that Fnatic's not able to get the Cyclone he was looking for. AOE Esports needs to be careful about this one. They might actually be able to recover a little bit of their own jungle for themselves, though.
Yeah, 2 big engage ultimates. Rather, 2 big engage tools used there for 100 Thieves next. Sword no longer having flash or the quickness for the moment here does mean AOE Esports do get a little bit of breathing room, because that's the big engage tool that they rely on besides Fnatic's Cyclone. So now AOE Esports actually feeling emboldened to be able to move in and threaten this Baron. And at this point, they're just going to go ahead and flip it, Jolly. They have nothing else they could possibly lose.
Except potentially a lot, because Sniper still had that teleport coming in onto the backside of the Cyclone. They're on the front to take down Zamundo. A beautiful ultimate from Dark Wings, who's going to be able to go into stasis. The flash over the wall by Winnie is followed up by the dash from both Sword and Fnatic. It's a double kill there for Fnatic. Sniper relatively low, but still able to stay in this fight. Link's trying to dash forward, and it is a beautiful, clean ace for 100 Thieves next, and potentially the end of the game right here.
We're looking at 40 to 30 seconds, Jolly, and Darkwings is already TPing to the mid lane. I think it's done and dusted here in game 100 Thieves next. Beautiful game from start to finish here, as surely this is the end now, as they are all grouping up at this top inhibitor.
Yeah, that's gotta be it. There's absolutely no time left. And there, this is it. I mean, this was the comp. Damage. 100 Thieves next started at the beginning of this game playing incredibly aggressively, and it was well done by AOE to try to push this out as far as they possibly could. But maybe they're going to have to take a look at readjusting their composition going into game number 2, because they do have at least one more opportunity, since it's a best of 3 here, Beatdown.
That's right, it is, Jolie. And I mean, that was honestly just a great game from 100 Next. I think start to finish. And that's the big thing to be highlighting here. The fact that they took control so very early, especially between Sword and Fnatic, being able to sync up, make plays across the map, not only take leads by being able to steal jungle camps, things like that, but we even saw the defense of Fnatic's jungle camps, making sure Winston was never able to catch back up when he started to fall behind.
And he did try. He really did try. We'll have to see
try.
if it works out in game number 2, but you know what? We've got some bigger brains available to break down that game number 1. We'll toss it back to the most ravishing man on the internet and the rest of the desk.
Thank you, Jolly and B-Town. It is yet again me, alongside Veteran and Parth. And looking at the game of what we saw just previously, I think AOE put up more of a fight than we expected, and definitely did execute things that we assumed. Veteran, I'll come to you first on this because AOE, I thought, did pretty solid in the first little bit.
I mean, they did. They were taking the fight into enemy jungle at points off of a very extended Drake contest. I will say though, I was quite curious on this Yuumi pick because I expected it to be very much SkyTech playing of Winnie straight in there. This kind of limits the scope of options you have in that regard, so it didn't strike me as the optimal way to play into 100 Thieves. Of what you want to do is disrupt their game plan. But yeah, I'm glad we saw a fight from them for about like 6 minutes, until it became squarely in 100 Thieves' favor. Good showing from them. Hopefully we'll see more in the next game. I'm interested if they put SkyTech on a tankier champion that he can actually roam around with his jungler with if that could maybe help them more on these contests.
Well, you know, it was a wondrous 6 minutes at that, but I think there was a one pivotal point when the game right around Rift Herald here, Parth, that we did see things shift over drastically in 100 Thieves' favor that I'm sure you'll be able to provide a bit more insight on.
Sure. So it actually came down to this Rift Herald play where I think what AOE was showing is that they're constantly going for objectives and starting them immediately. That's what happened to the first dragon, and you see this again with the Herald. The problem is you see Fiora has the shove, and also Rakan has his ultimate, and Yuumi does not. And that changes the dynamic of this entire team fight. It allows them to get the first kill on Trundle. Usually with a poke comp like this, you want to make sure that you have all your vision, and you're making sure you're poking with Ezreal and Zoe as they came in. But this advantage that Rakan had just by being 6 allowed them to really brute force this fight, and Yuumi wasn't able to do anything to help her team out.
It's tragic, but you know, yet again, Parth has showed that he is indeed a dog person, so perhaps there is a bit more salt on top of the donut, maybe. But that's just personally my opinion, so I do understand that. But as we're going throughout the entire game, I find that is definitely 100 Thieves decided, hey, you know, we've been kind of down for a little bit. Let's decide to win the game by taking small, scrappy fights as we went throughout and consistently putting up, I would say, really intense events around major objectives, especially as you go over to the second dragon fight. Rather than 100 Thieves wanted to make sure that they cemented their place in the game as only one way they knew how.
Yeah, the game truly explodes at this point. It was interesting that AOE were very often first on these contests. They were first on the Herald contest you saw earlier. There's a Baron later on they were, and they were first on this Drake as well. They can't quite decide that they want to peel off for the Fiora, who's now miles away. And in being so indecisive, they basically gifted the Drake over the 100x and put themselves in a choke point. And in there's now a lot of power on the Azir, on the Wukong. Now they're forced all the way back into their jungle, into that flanking field that they were trying to deal with earlier. And now, even though they're able to take her out, she's delayed the game long enough for the rest of the team to move in through that choke point and, you know, clean up the rest of them. So very indecisive on these objectives. 100 Thieves knew when they were stronger and where they were stronger, and they were much less indecisive there. And as a result, you know, they were always able to win these contests.
Yeah, and from there, it's kind of snowballed even more forward, much more downhill, where it was the Baron take after the next, right? And then as you continued forward as well, it was dragon after dragon, a small skirmish here and there. Nothing super explosive, though, which I was expecting a bit more from both sides, which personally being caught off guard by, but I think AOE realized that there was no real way to fight 100 Thieves at any sort of stable point in the game. And if we are looking at this at a more macro perspective, AOE Parth have chosen to go to blue side going into the next game. So is it going to come down to, yet again, they have to extend those 6 minutes of glory they had, or is there more there?
I do think that they want to make sure that, again, Skytech is more enabled to move around the map. I think there were periods of time, especially during like the early laning phase and even going into before the second Herald, where he's just attached to Ezreal, and it didn't really allow Trundle to do anything. I think Wukong even went in and stole Trundle's first red, and even teamfights kind of felt really disjointed because they had a poke comp and they're able to get up and set up beforehand and start the objective, but they didn't really have the key deep vision set up to see the enemy players coming in, allowing Ezreal and Zoe to poke. And I feel like a lot of that can be changed if you are on a support player who can kind of be more independent and leave and follow the Trundle around and set up this vision. And so I just think that they need to go back a little bit more to the fundamentals, fix the synergy between Skytech and Winnie by choosing slightly different champions, and just make sure that when the objectives are starting, that they are keyed into like what the enemy team is going to do, because 100 Thieves is very aggressive and they're always going to contest you.
I mean,
you saw that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on top of that, I would also say a huge issue is that they didn't seem to realize they're even playing a poke comp at all in a lot of these. Like in the replay that you just saw, and on the Baron that you see later, and on the Herald as well, they all peeled off as if their only real option is to burst on the flank. That isn't their option. In fact, you don't even have to leash that Drake at all. If enemy ends up with priority on that Drake, and you have Zoe and you have Ezreal, you don't need deep vision of there to start poking out around that objective. You can force them off. But instead, they force themselves off with a one engage composition and wonder why they end up in a poor position to win the game. Come at it from 3 different angles there as 100 Thieves, and their one engage is pretty much worthless. You can sacrifice any one of those flanks and win the fight overall. So, I mean, they're going to play this style, actually play the poke composition itself. Otherwise, bring Skytech back on these engaged champions, bring a jungler back on these engaged champions. Trundle isn't exactly all that. And start playing these heavy pick compositions again that you've had the success with.
And yes, go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to also praise 100 Thieves on the other side. Like, they took every opportunity they were given, and they were really clean on the engages. I think Wukong and Rakan, I think Sword and Fnatic going in, always found their targets and burst 1 or 2 players down, and then it made the rest of the team fight super easy on them. So I do want to shout out 100 Thieves for always being on the right side of the objective contest and knowing that they're somewhat outranged and playing the situations out well.
100 Thieves continue to show their dominance throughout, even after the back and forth you've seen for them throughout the entire season. AOE now have an even tougher contest against them, being down 1, looking at potential elimination and being kicked out of PGCQ and get away for the finals. Winning by 100 Thieves, all they have in front of them is the prize, and we're able to see if perhaps they can take it home and become our first finalist. We'll be back after this short break.